Wherever you're listening in the world, it's a pleasure to welcome you to IsraelCast, the podcast powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. I'm Steven Shalowitz, first reminding you that for over 120 years, Jewish National Fund USA has been the premier philanthropic movement for the land and people of Israel. While best known for planting trees in Israel, JNF USA contributes to Israeli life in so many ways, including community development in the Negev and the Galilee, preservation of heritage sites, supporting people with disabilities, and connecting high school and college students to Israel. To learn more and to see how you can contribute, do visit jnf.org. Once again, jnf.org. And in just a short while, I'll be sharing with you info and dates for the upcoming Jewish National Fund USA Conference 2023. So get your calendars out for that. But first, is the Margalit Startup City Galil Innovation Center on your radar? It's a groundbreaking hub for inventors, multinational companies, developers, entrepreneurs, and academic researchers collaborating to create the next big food tech and agri-tech startups. And to talk about it all, we are pleased to welcome Nisan Zeevi, the Vice President of the Margalit Startup City Galil and Impact Director at Jerusalem Venture Partners, or JVP. He joins us now on the line via Zoom from Kibbutz Kfar Giladi in the very north of Israel. Welcome to the program, Nisan.
Thank you, Steven.
Before we get rolling, first share with our listeners actually where the kibbutz is.
So Kibbutz Kfar Giladi, it's one of the oldest kibbutz in Israel. More than 107 years ago. 7 years ago, it was established, and we are like 500 meters from the border with Lebanon, right in the north part of the Hula Valley that I'm sure that some of your listeners are familiar with. And it's a great privilege to do such a big thing that we will spoke about it in a moment here in the right on the border, the triangle between Syria, Lebanon, and Israel.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country.
Indeed.
Can't wait to visit you. Anyway, let's kick off our conversation really now, Nisan, by having you share the Margalit Startup City model, its mission, and where these startup cities are really located throughout Israel.
Yes, so Margalit Startup City, it's a unique model funded by the entrepreneur Dr. Ariel Margalit almost 15 years ago. It started in Jerusalem, and the model is talking about how you can create a multidisciplinary center that involves from one side investors, from the other side startups. The third side is academia and research institutes, and the fourth part is consulting firm, big consulting firm like Deloitte and others. And the whole idea is to mix them together, because this is how the biggest and the great ideas are made. And I think that in Jerusalem, when Ariel started it and took and abandoned the building in the center of Jerusalem and transformed it to one of the most vibrant places for startups in Israel, he understood that if he can do such a thing in such a complicated city like Jerusalem, maybe we can do it in other cities. And then we understood that Tel Aviv, they don't need us to create a vibrant ecosystem. There is other regions and other cities in Israel that needs this model to flourish the ecosystem and to nourish the cluster and to raise and startups and to build startups outside of Tel Aviv. And so after the big success of Jerusalem, we moved to Be'er Sheva. And in our model, we have one rule, that each city or each region should be focusing on a specific theme. Not like high-tech in general, but to find the category that fit the most to the asset of this specific city or this specific region. So in Be'er Sheva, after we saw the strength of the university over there and the decision of the government to relocate all the intelligence unit of the IDF from the center of Israel to Be'er Sheva, we understood that cyber should be the theme for the entire city. And right now there is more than 100 companies in Be'er Sheva that already create more than 5,000 high salary jobs. And the reason why I emphasize it because our biggest goal, our main goal, and this is what you're gonna hear from me in this entire session, it's to create high salary jobs. Because when you create high salary jobs, you can attract the young professional families, and then you create an economic development model that actually can succeed. So in Be'er Sheva, cyber is the big thing. After Be'er Sheva, we started also in Haifa and in the Galilee. I'm going to speak in the Galilee in a moment. I'm just going to say that Haifa, which is a beautiful city in Israel, we decide to focus on the downtown area of Haifa, which was abandoned for too many years. And if you will come now, Steven, to the downtown Haifa, you could not believe that this is Haifa. It's like Barcelona. Dozens of startups. The university is the University of Haifa located the computer science faculty downtown Haifa. Big hubs from WeWork to Philips, and it's looked like the downtown was need like injection of entrepreneurship, and right now everything is flourish over there. Dozens of bars and beautiful. And the other location is the Galilee. I have to emphasize that in the last 3 years, cities from across the globus approach us and ask to build this model also in their countries. I can tell you that in New York, we have one of the most vibrant hub, Margalit Startup City, New York. In Paris, we are very active. And in 2 months, I can tell you about another big city in Europe that we're gonna launch the Margalit Startup City model.
So cyber is the focus in Be'er Sheva. Talk about the focus in Haifa and then also Jerusalem before we move on to what's going on in the Galilee.
So in Jerusalem, we started with when Ariel started it, it was 2010, something like this, 2007. So new media was the big issue. That was the big thing. Now Jerusalem is focusing on AI. In Haifa, the theme that we found to be the most ideal for Haifa, based on their assets, is digital health, which is a category that bring together from one side technologies from all kinds of vertical and community from the other side, and wellness and medical device. And it was a big dilemma what kind of theme we will choose for Haifa. But after we understood that Haifa is the city with the most hospitals, 5 hospitals only in Haifa, and big multinationals that leading the economic growth of Haifa, like Philips, that have a very strong R&D site in Haifa. We convinced the government. They create a budget of something like 25 billion shekel to encourage and to stimulate the ecosystem around digital health in downtown Haifa. And all of a sudden, other companies that focusing on digital health open their own R&D site in Haifa because everyone is about digital health. So this is the story of Haifa. The Galilee, it's a little bit different because not like all other examples I just mentioned, the Galilee combines 18 or even 19 different municipalities. It's not like in Haifa or in Jerusalem, you have the mayor, and when the mayor is getting his decision, okay. Here we have 19 mayors, okay, 19 politicians, and they need to decide together what is this one theme that the entire region will be focused on. And this was a very challenging part. In the beginning, when we asked the mayors and the municipalities, what is this one specific theme that this region, the Galilee, can lead Israel in 7 years? in the beginning, everyone told us tourism, that tourism should be the economic engine, which is quite right, because the Galilee is the most popular location for internal tourism in Israel, summer, winter, spring, fall. You can always see here internal tourism in this region. The problem there is that tourism is not a good engine to create high salary jobs. The opposite, very low salaries. So then we started to do a basic SWOT analysis in the region. And we are hosting hundreds of students from all over the world, and they are always surprised that we actually using these kinds of models, like the SWOT model.
It works though. Explain for our listener. Listen, I came from the world of advertising. We used to do SWOT analysis all the time, but explain for our listeners that might not be familiar with it, what it is.
Yeah, so SWOT is actually a term that include strength, weakness, threats, and opportunity. So when you are trying to examine a region based on a SWOT analysis, you find out that there is a very interesting asset to the Galilee. First, a very rich know-how in agriculture. Okay, even before the state of Israel was established, by the way. Most of the fruits and vegetables in Israel coming from this region. Second, subsidized infrastructure. In Israel, as you know, as close you are to the border, the more incentive you get from and subsidized from the government for housing, manufacturing, facilities, and more. Third, we find out that there is a very vibrant academia college in this region. We have the Tel Chai College, Oalo, Kiryat College, and Tzfat College, which is in around something like 30 miles. And another thing that we find out that we, as the northmost part north part of Israel, we have a treasure that's called Migal. Migal, it's an applied research institute with more than 300 employees, 115 PhD in the world of food, nutrition, bioinformatics, agriculture, climate, and more. But the most interesting thing that we found out about the Galilee, that from the cherries that they grow in the Golan Heights to the Kinneret when they are growing their banana, it's something like 30 miles. Except desert, you have all types of climate that you can imagine. All types of climate, except desert. So it's like the ultimate playground for food company and agriculture company to do their testing and to do their pilots, for example. So after we found out that the combination between food, agriculture, and innovation can create a big economic engine for the entire region, we wrote a plan. When I say we, it's not like us, it's not only us, the Margalit team, but it's the same 18 different municipalities. Okay, it's the first achievement, by the way, when 18 municipalities wrote one plan with one direction. It's one of the biggest weakness of the periphery in Israel, when you have this all kinds of small municipalities divided, and you cannot create something big because each one take care only to their interest. So for the first time,
that speaks to the vision of these leaders within the Galilee, that they understood that there was something larger than their own small town that they wanted to really embrace, and that they can all join together, and there was power in the unity of everyone joining together.
Correct. And it's even bigger than you just described, because the only situation when you can find this kind of unity is only, from my experience as a boy that was born and raised here, it was only happened when rockets were fired to the Galilee, the Katyusha from Lebanon, for example. So for the first time, we are all united through and by not by the threats of the rockets, but as
you're united by the opportunity, is what it is.
Yeah, united about the opportunity. Exactly. So this was the first achievement. Second, we wrote.
By the way, Nissan, I think you should give yourself a Nobel Peace Prize for bringing all these 18 municipal leaders together. That's no small feat,
Yeah, it's an issue here in Israel. You have the kibbutzim and you have Kiryat Shmona, which is a city. It's a very cool city and a different thing. But yeah, it was the first and the most important achievement, by the way. The most important, then even more than any of the investment that you were gonna hear in a moment, because this was the basic, this was the fundamental moment when everybody gathered together and help us to take the vision to the next step. So after that, as I mentioned, we wrote a plan, and the government, based on the track record of Erel, Margalit, they got a lot of confidence, because it's not like 18 mayors are thinking about, okay, let's do food tech. They are coming with a well-known entrepreneur with a track record of success in Jerusalem and in Haifa and in Beersheba. So the government adopt the plan that we wrote and create a budget of more than $100 million to transform the entire Galilee to a center of excellence, focusing on food tech and Agri-tech. And it was a very exciting moment for us to see the vision now in a governmental decision with budget to do it. And this was in 2018. And again, I'm emphasizing it because economic development, it's not like startups. It takes time to see the fruit. And now we are enjoying some of the fruit of the work that we did in 2018.
Sure. Talk about the decision then to place the startup in Kiryat Shmona.
So the Eastern Galilee is a very decentralized area. We don't have the big, strong city like Tel Aviv or Herzliya or Jerusalem or Haifa or I don't know, or Rehovot.
Beersheba, yeah.
Or Beersheba, yeah. It's a very small city, 20,000 residents, that's all. It's like a small university in the US. And in the surrounding area of Kiryat Shmona, there is dozens of small kibbutzim, very small, very, very small communities of 600 people and another 700 people and 2,000 people. And when we thought where should be the main platform of the entire initiative to transform the Galilee to a food tech center, we understood that Kiryat Shmona should be the place to be the dominant place in the region. And why we decided, because when the city is strong, so all the periphery of the city are also enjoying from a strong city, exactly like people are coming from Tel Aviv, from the surrounding area. So, and by the way, it was not easy in the beginning. Too many people told us, don't do it in Kiryat Shmona. Do it in the suburb and create like in the green field and just build a big hangar and it's look beautiful. But it's not the same like doing it in Kiryat Shmona, because in Kiryat Shmona, when you are building an iconic physical platform, it's create a direct impact on the community, a direct impact. The small business, the cafe, the falafel, the PR, all the small business in the surrounding area of the center of the city are part of this big
ecosystem.
Yes. And this is why we choose Kiryat Shmona. But I have to tell you that in the first 5 years, after 2018, in the first 4 years, we didn't put all our effort on building a physical venue. We put our effort to build the ecosystem, to connect the Tel Chai College, okay, that now have a food faculty, a food science faculty, a nutrition faculty, a biotechnology faculty, and a computer science faculty, to connect them to this big food tech theme that we are implemented in the entire region, to connect Migal, the research institute, to give the researchers in Migal the confidence to take the research to the next step and to commercialize it and to build startup based on the research, to connect their children. You wouldn't believe it, but we checked and we found out that Kiryat Shmona, it's the only city worldwide, the only one, that in every school, elementary school, high school, Orthodox, non-Orthodox, in all schools in Kiryat Shmona, the children are learning food tech as part of their curriculum.
And is that because of the work that you're doing?
And yeah, and you know, when we convinced the Ministry of Education to create a budget to build in each one of these schools a food tech lab, you know, like a small kitchen with some equipment, and when we train the teachers about what is food tech, I'm going to speak about it in a moment, about what is food tech, and we saw the excitement of the teachers, we understood that we have something big. You know why? Because not like cyber or fintech, the food tech category, it's a very sensible category. You can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can talk about it with everyone. Right. You don't have to be a science. It's not science, it's food.
So Nisan, talk about what food tech actually is.
So food tech, it's a brand new category in the high-tech scene. I think something in the last 7-8 years, and it's a brand new category that was born in a perfect storm. Because from one side, agriculture must find new way to grow more on less land. Actually, we don't have free land on Earth, as you know. And another great example, that 75% of the entire agriculture worldwide is not serving us. It's to feed the animal that only 28% of population are eating. So it's a very unbalanced industry that need a disruption. From the other side, the food corporate already changing some of the unhealthy ingredient that maybe some of us ate as children, and you're not gonna give it to your children, from like margarine and other unhealthy stuff. That, you know, it's a different generation, and the food corporates are already understanding that they need to change some of the unhealthy ingredients in our food. And in the third dimension that create this new category that called food tech, it's that technology that was developed in other categories like cyber, for example, found itself implemented in the world of food and agriculture. And it's mind-blowing to see a technology coming from the security field, like a seismic sensor that they're using in one of the most important unit in Israel. And now it's become a seismic sensor that can detect the presence of the red palm weevil, which is a pest that's destroying and killing millions of palm trees all over the world. And it's based on a technology that was developed in the security side of Israel. So it's a brand new category that dealing with one of the biggest challenges worldwide. How the hell we feed 8 billion people on Earth with climate crisis, with the Ukrainian crisis, and more crises on their way. And, you know, you can meet this big buzz in every supermarket. And I have to say, I'm not a vegan. I really love meat. But when you understand that to produce 1 kilogram of ground beef, you need 10 dunams of land and 16,000 liters of water, you understand that it could not work. We will need new strategy how to grow our meat.
Well, Nissan, I went plant-based about 4 years ago, and one of the reasons why was because it made absolutely no sense to me the amount of resources that we're putting into raising meat and the small amount of people on the planet that are actually consuming meat, and the opportunity to relook at this whole food system and how we are feeding ourselves. And that's not even talking about the hormones and the antibiotics that are going in the meat that are actually hurting the animals, and then in turn that are hurting us as well because we're consuming that meat. So this whole area needs to be completely shaken up. Indeed, I want to talk about some of the startups that are working within the Margalit Center there. And I also want to talk about the impact on the kids as well. But before we do that, I think this might be a really good time just to take a really quick pause, because at the very top of the show, I mentioned that Jewish National Fund USA is going to be having its annual conference, Nissan. I hope you mark your calendar because it's
I'll
going to
be
be
there. Colorado, I will be there.
Are you going to be there actually?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, you stole the thunder by saying where it is. It's going to be in Denver, Colorado from November 30th to December 3rd. I had absolutely no idea that you were going to be there.
Yeah, I'm bringing the entire our entire team, and 3 food tech company from Kiryat Shmona will come also, and the participant in the annual conference will taste some of the most innovative product that now developed here in the Galilee.
Fantastic. I look forward to seeing you there. Once again, that's November 30th to December 3rd in Denver. That's Jewish National Fund USA's global conference for Israel. And it's just a wonderful time where leaders and innovators like Nisan and his team from around the world come together. They're shaping the future of Israel. And you also don't want to miss America's largest Shabbat dinner. And I'm sure there's going to be meat on the menu there, Nissan, but there will also be vegan options as well, and I'm sure vegetarian options, and it's always a delicious time. Visit jnf.org/global. Once again, jnf.org/global to register, to really see all the incredible interactive Israel experiences, the outstanding speakers. The spirit there is just absolutely amazing, and there's also wonderful networking opportunities as well, and you can even meet Nisan there, as I'm going to meet him there too. And if that weren't enticing enough, yours truly, who's been doing the IsraelCast podcast now for over 6 years, will actually be doing 2 live IsraelCast recordings there at the conference. So if you want to come join me and ask questions of my guests, TBA who they are, I'm very excited about that. Then also come to the conference and check that out. I believe both of my sessions are on the very first day. Once again, do register at jnf.org/global, and we hope to see you there. Now, Nisan, I do want to ask you about some of the startups. Just share what they're doing and what we should know about them.
So I think that food tech is the coolest category in the high tech, because everyone can understand anything about each one of these companies. So just a glimpse of the startups that were developed here in the last 3 years. By the way, more than 172 startups in 30-mile radius here in the Galilee, 70% of them focusing on food tech, ag tech, and climate tech. So just to give you one example, is a company called Solvit. Solvit is a company, it's the first company worldwide that developed a chocolate that can reduce the level of sugar in your blood, can reduce the level of sugar in your blood.
I'm all for that, because I love my chocolate.
So yeah, so in the beginning, and in food tech, as an investor, it's very simple. If it's not tasty, you will not invest. Very simple. So in the beginning, it was not too tasty to be politically correct. It was awful because they actually putting inside the chocolate a formula of active ingredient from herbs based on a Chinese medicine approach. And in the beginning, it was not tasty. It took them something like 5 or 6 months to find the way to make it tasty. And they just raised $3 million. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we are counting the jobs that we create. So Solvit already have 12 high salary jobs in the company. Another great company that we see how they are growing right now and were developed here 3 years ago. It's a company called Hargol Foodtech, which means in English crickets. Hargol in Hebrew, and they actually growing crickets and transform them to a powder, to a protein powder, and then they implement the powder in all kinds of food application, like gummy bears, for example. You cannot feel that it was crickets. You cannot taste. It's not taste like crickets. And the company just raised something like $4 million, have more than 22 employees, high salary jobs. So it's another great example. And it's kosher, by the way, for all three religions.
And I know it's high in protein as well.
Exactly. This is why they're growing the crickets, because the high amount of protein. Now think about it. In an ideal world, maybe it's only a dream and only a vision, but I have to make it happen in some way. There is 1 million children and refugees in Syria starving and needs protein. Just imagine if I can convince a third country to take the gummy bears of Hargol Foodtech and give them as something that the body needs, protein. So, Foodtech, it's a category that creates tikkun olam. And
because you said at the very beginning, it's all about creating jobs. It's about creating jobs, Nisan, but it's really so much more than that. It's really about changing the face of the world, how we eat, how we approach agriculture, how we approach food. That's really what it's all about. It's about feeding this planet.
From global perspective, totally. And the big benefit that is also a regional benefit.
Sure.
The high salary jobs, but you are totally right. And I think this is why we have, only in 2022, we have 47 delegation from 47 countries that came here to the Galilee. We just hosted, by the way, today, the JNF faculty with 40 professors from 18 different universities in the US.
The faculty fellowship program.
Exactly. And from France, from Guatemala, from Mexico, from Brazil, even from Lebanon, we had some visitors. So Hargol Foodtech is another company that doing really good and great things here. Another interesting company is a company called Kinoko. And Kinoko, it's a company that actually growing a mushroom. It's not the mushroom, it's the mycelium. The mycelium, it's the most interesting part in the mushroom. It's the part underneath the ground. By the way, if you didn't saw Fantastic Fungi in Netflix, this should be your next thing on Netflix. I'm sorry to do advertising for Netflix right now, but it's a movie that will blow your mind, and you will understand that the mushroom was here before us, and they will be here after we will leave this planet, by the way. And the most interesting part of the mushroom is not the thing that we all seen, in pictures and everything. It's underneath the ground. It's called mycelium. It's actually a network. And they are growing the mycelium on a layer of legumes, and by that creating a whole cut alternative meat. And I will emphasize the term whole cut, okay? Because, again, I'm going to be politically correct, because I heard that you have hundreds of thousands of listeners, and I don't want to be sued by one of them or by one of the company.
We have very nice listeners, Nisan. No one's going to sue you.
But, people think that, I'm sure that you are eating, brands like products like Beyond and Impossible and all kinds of alternative plant-based. To be honest with you, if the earth is important to you, you rather slaughter a cow and eat it than eat a processing meatball that containing 18 different ingredients that coming from all over the world to this big factory that actually processing meatballs for you. The carbon footprint of this company is much higher than, you know, just eating a cow. So the world and the industry, the big, you know, the big players in the food industry are now looking for the whole cut alternative meat, which means one raw material that it could be the thing itself, with no adding more and more ingredient to feel like meat. So Kinoko, this is what they are doing, and I can tell you that two of the biggest food companies worldwide, cannot say their name, but you can imagine, because there is only, you know, 6 big companies, are now negotiate with them to, you know, to take the company and to take the product and make it their own product, which means that this company should be a big company in a couple of years.
Well, it's also a question of health, because you don't want to eat things that have too many unnatural ingredients. So if something is a natural ingredient that is coming from the ground and that's part of the mushroom family, then it is in and of itself good for you. And, you know, there aren't any preservatives, et cetera, in that. I mean, I'm sure they'll probably add preservatives because they have to, because there's the whole shelf life issue there. Fascinating. And you know, jokes aside about going to the conference, I really want people to go to the conference, because I'm sure they're going to be hearing more from Mr. Margalit about some of these startups. They're going to hear from you as well about them. And again, you have so many. I mean, we could just do a whole episode just ticking off every one of these really innovative companies that are really helping to change the world. When we talk about changing the area itself, that whole northern Galilee region, which is a stunning part, not only of Israel, but of the world, I would be truly remiss if we didn't talk about the Galilee Culinary Institute, of which I have somewhat of a hand in, because I produce their podcast called What's Burning. And so that's also a game changer for the region, because they're going to be, again, part of this whole ecosystem of farm to table, and working with the folks at Tel Chai, and working with all of the startups to really, you know, their vision is to reimagine culinary education, that it's not just about knife skills, it's about everything else. And so that in and of itself is also a very exciting development for the region.
Yeah, and you know, it's part of the life cycle that we are building here for a startup. Because if you think about it, startup is, you know, the first stage is to take your idea and to check it in the lab, okay? And then to build a company with a business model. This is where we are entering together, by the way, with the generous support of Jewish National Fund USA, that helping us to, you know, finance this whole thing that we are doing. And then after you have a business model and you need the first investor, we are helping the startup to get the first $1 million. And then when they are growing and they need to scale up, because they have a big customer, they need to produce the material. Then you've got the Culinary Institute to take some of the material of this company and start playing with them, and start to understand what is the future of food from a culinary perspective, not only from a nutrition or economic perspective. So it's definitely a pillar, very important and strategic pillar in the life cycle that we built here. And part of the very unique ecosystem, because again, think about it, Steven, from one side, you've got like the academic and the research institute, you have the industries here, you have the farmers here, someone needs to grow some of the things that we have just spoke about. You've got the municipalities and the ministries in the government that help you with the regulation, and they are all aligned to this one big food tech thing that's happening in the Galilee. And you have the restaurant and the Culinary Institute that will serve and use some of the products that were developed in this very thriving and unique ecosystem in the Galilee. And I just want to say that it's not only about the food, it's about how we grow our food. And just to give you 2 examples, one of my favorite companies here, it's a company called Blue Huna. And Blue Huna is dealing with one of the biggest challenges worldwide, the plastic challenge. And to be much more accurate, they are dealing with the plastic straws issue, okay? Because it's a big issue, not only in Israel, but worldwide. In Israel, we are throwing to the garbage every day, 3 million plastic straw. You can guess, can you guess the number in the US? How much you are throwing to the garbage every day?
No idea.
700 million plastic straws.
A day.
A day. And this is because the alternative is pretty lousy. You know, the paper straw is melting in the cup, it's melting in your mouth. The metal straw, it's too expensive. Restaurant will not buy it and just serve it to the audience. So there is a company called Blue Huna that actually developed a new breed of hay that you can use as a straw. And it's biodegradable. In 2 weeks, it's vanished. It's like, it's a hay. It's actually hay. And so for the farmers here, the growth of this company, Blue Huna, it's a great opportunity for them because someone will need to grow these straws from hay. So it's not only the food, but it's also the farmers and the agriculture that actually connected to the entire story here in the Galilee.
So by the way, Nisan, before we move on, if any of our listeners are interested in investing in some of these startups, how do they go about doing that?
So each one of them can Google us as Margalit Startup City Galil and, you know, direct contact to me and to my team. And we have a great partnership, by the way, with JNF USA. Some of the members in JNF USA are investing directly in these companies. And it's a great offering of impact investing, because if you think about it, it's two circles of impact. One is a global one, as you just mentioned. And the second one is a regional one, because it's economic growth and everything. So we see it as one of the most interesting investment right now worldwide. And it's also the next phase, could be the next phase of the philanthropy. Not just donate money to build a building, but to invest in a local Galilean company that doing good to the world, but also if they will succeed, they will create hundreds of jobs that will attract hundreds of young families to the Galilee.
And that's a real mitzvah to give someone a job, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so that's also the other thing I want to talk about, because you mentioned that the startup is in Kiryat Shmona, and then from there it breeds coffee shops and falafel and dry cleaners and everything else like in any other city. Yet there are also larger institutions, shall we say, that are going to have to grow up around Kiryat Shmona and throughout the region: hospitals, schools, entertainment, for example. Because if you want to attract families, you want to attract young people up there, you have to give them the full circle of the full offering, if you will.
Full offering, the holistic offering, we call
Yeah.
it. Totally. And this is part of our approach. Look, listen, we are not replacing the government. We don't want to replace the government. It's no good. But we really believe that we should create, and we are creating, an holistic offering for families, not only by creating jobs, but together, by the way, with JNF USA, we creating a culture event. For example, just a week ago, we orchestrated the second street concert in Kiryat Shmona. The first one, we did it last year. This was the second one. We brought 26 musicians from the Philharmonic here in Israel. They did a street concert together with children from Kiryat Shmona, from the Druze village, from the kibbutzim. It was open to the public. We did everything. And a lot of people, you know, from the high-tech scene are asking us, why are you doing that? This is not your job. This is the government job. But we understand that if we want to attract the young professional families, okay, we found a great job for one of them. We need to make sure that the environment, the entire Galilee is an attractive place. And thanks to JNF USA, for example, that now are building the medical center in Kiryat Shmona, it helps us to attract more families, because when you are telling to young families, young entrepreneurs that thinking about moving to the Galilee with their startups, and they are asking about the services, medical services in the region. It's not like Tel Aviv, but as you can see, they are now building the medical center in Kiryat Shmona. It's a big project, very important, by the way, led by JNF USA. And to be honest with you, sometimes it's even more important than what we are doing, because, my children, okay, if something, God forbid, but if something happened to my children, I need to drive 55 minutes, an hour, okay, for emergency, an hour. And we don't have enough appropriate medical center here in Kiryat Shmona, so JNF is leading one of the most important projects here in Kiryat Shmona, in the entire Galilee. And yes, look, we are not Tel Aviv yet.
But I don't think you want to be Tel Aviv.
No, yeah.
Right, because you have your own unique flavor up there.
Yeah, exactly. We don't, when people ask me when the train is supposed to come to Kiryat Shmona. There is a train in Israel that started in Haifa to Be'er Sheva. Okay, so in 6 years from now, there will be a train station in Kiryat Shmona. And
where's it going to go? Where's it going to go?
From Kiryat Shmona to Haifa, and from Haifa to Tel Aviv, and from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the entire state.
Nice. How long will that take to go from Kiryat Shmona to Haifa, for example?
In a train?
Yeah.
Something like 45 minutes.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. And to be honest with you, even today, from Tel Aviv to Kiryat Shmona by car, it's something like 2.5 hours. I know it's not the same like in the US, but if I need to drive once 2 weeks to Tel Aviv, it's not so bad. Okay, 2.5 hours driving. And
it's because you're listening to the IsraelCast podcast on the way to and from.
Totally, especially the last one.
That's right.
And so it's a process, again, economic development, it takes time. And we understood something very clear for us, we're not leaning on government decisions, okay? The train, we creating our own future and our own reality. We are doing it with great partners like Russell Robinson. When Russell and us started 8 years ago, you need people with big vision to understand what you are saying when there is nothing out there, and Russell believed and still believe in what we are doing, and gave us the entire, trust to do and lead some of the most exciting projects that all of the country are now speaking about them.
Right. Well, listen, Nisan, you've been so generous with your time. Just a couple other bases before you push off. It's well into the evening there as we record this right now, and I'm sure you want to go to sleep. You mentioned students and what's happening in schools, and I love how you're interacting with local kids, including the Druze community, and encouraging them and giving them opportunities to become entrepreneurs. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, the Druze community in particular.
So it's a fascinating thing right now here, because the Druze village, the Druze communities here in the Upper Galilee, until 5 years ago, they are living here, but they felt that they are still part of the Assad regime. Okay, they didn't have like an ID, an Israeli ID.
Mm-hmm.
And something like 5-6 years ago, when they understood that, with the civil war in Syria, and they saw the real reality that happening over there, they understood that they need to make a decision, and they made a decision and the entire Fort Druze village in the Golan Heights decide to make it official and to be Israelis. And they all have now this blue idea, Israeli idea, and in something like the last 3 years, you saw how they are eager to be part of the big things that's happening in Israel, including entrepreneurship. These children, we have children from Majdal Shams. Majdal Shams, it's the highest village right next to the Hermon Mount on the border with Lebanon. And the children over there, it's pretty amazing. You have to see it to believe that it's actually happening. They decide to join the food tech next generation program that we have for children. And they are dealing with one of the biggest challenge of the farmers, the local farmers. The local farmers in Majdal are growing apples. And in apples, when you're growing apples, you have a lot of waste, a lot of fruits that going to the can. Okay, they're not selling these fruits because if there is a hole or something, they throw it to the garbage. So the children are taking the apple that they're usually throwing to the garbage and transform it to an ice cream from apples. And then when the CEO of Facebook Israel, Adi Sofer, came to a visit, and we invited the children from Majdal to present the product to the CEO of Facebook, you just can imagine how it's impact the children and empower them to present to the CEO of Facebook their new ice cream made out of waste of apple. And of course, and then the mothers and the grandmother and the father, they are all part of this big and excitement. This is how you do an inclusion, how you can connect communities to one big thing and make everyone feel like part of it. So it's pretty amazing. And as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, that in Kiryat Shmona, it's a very poor city. Mm-hmm. Okay, children, they are educated to think in a very small way. If you will get out of the city, this is the biggest exit you will have. Just get out of Kiryat Shmona to Tel Aviv. Don't stay here. This is like, was the traditional approach. And now when you are seeing 9 years old boy presenting an idea and presenting his pitch about his product that he is developing in the school, it's mind-blowing, because it's not only that by using the food tech as a very sensible category, you expose him to chemistry and biology and science in generally, but you also stimulate and building the state of mind of entrepreneurship in each one of these children.
Yeah, it's so empowering for them.
Yes. So it's pretty amazing to see. And by the way, we are doing it from an economic development perspective, because in 6-7 years, these children will be the employees of some of the companies that will scale up, and they will need 200, 300 employees. And they already will have people from the city that know and lived and educated about food tech, about the values that we just mentioned, about climate and more. So
listen, I don't think they're just going to be the employees. I think they're going to be the CEOs.
Some of them will be the CEOs, some will be the founders.
Absolutely.
So
listen, as we wind,
it's actually to create, Steven, it's actually, when I think about it, we are actually rewriting the story of the Galilee. It's from a region that was suffering from Katyusha rockets and for the first time have a very bold approach and a value proposition, not only to people here in Israel, but also for big multinational from the US that are partnering with us here, like Mars, Nestle, Cargill, Grupo Bimbo, and dozens of other companies that coming here on a monthly basis to do some pilots with some of the Galilean startups.
All right, Nisan, as we wind down our conversation right now, none of this would have been possible without the vision, really, of Errol Margalit. And I'm wondering, what's his secret sauce?
Wow. I think that, you know, I'm working with Errol for several time, and I think that he, from one side, he's like entrepreneur, and from the other side, he, you know, in philosophy and read books about poetry. And I think that the interdisciplinary approach that he bringing with him this is the secret sauce, because everyone can be related to these big initiatives and big visions. It's not only about the startups, it's about the creative class, it's not like the mid class, it's the creative class, the painter and the artist and the entrepreneur and the research and the student, everyone can be related to. And I think that he bring with him a lot of the DNA of the startup nation. He one of the architects of the startup nation, as people know Israel. And eventually it's a guy that never learned computer science, born in a kibbutz. His mother was a teacher. His father worked in a community center. And it's a great lesson for children that you don't have to be a computer expert to build the next big thing in the world. And we are always telling to entrepreneurs what Errol is telling us. Don't think about the how, think about the what. Don't spend too much time about how you are doing it. There is the programs and the technology people, they will know how to do it. Think about the what. What is the thing that you want to do? And I think this is the secret sauce that Errol brings with him. And part of his DNA is to do these big things, not in the most ideal environment like in Tel Aviv, by doing it in Jerusalem, in Kiryat Shmona, in Haifa, which is much more difficult. People are looking and then thinking, wait, does this kind of project is a philanthropy project? There is any business opportunity? And when you think about it, if you think about it, you're trying to see a picture when the nonprofit, the philanthropy, is actually helping the entire ecosystem. If there is some business opportunity for us to invest in company and to get, succeed in some of the investment, perfect. But there is two entities that actually working in parallel. From one, the nonprofit and the ecosystem, and one is the business opportunities. And it's truly a privilege to work with Errol and to see how a vision become a reality. It's not something that you see much.
And we should also say he's going to be at the national conference, the Jewish National Fund USA conference in Denver, November 30th to December 3rd. So people can definitely get inspiration from him. And we certainly have gotten a lot of inspiration from you, Nisan, during this conversation. We want to thank you so much for joining us here on IsraelCast. And we'll have info about Nisan and, of course, the Margalit Startup universe on the show notes page of our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. And of course, we do release new episodes of the show every other Wednesday. And just so you never miss an episode, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. It's so easy. Simply search for IsraelCast. And don't forget to rate and review us, because that really helps us with our rankings, which in turn make it easier for more folks around the world to find us. Or you can always enjoy the show by visiting us at our website. Once again, it's jnf.org/IsraelCast. Now, it takes a homo shop to put IsraelCast together. For that, we thank Vivian Grossman, Dara Shapiro, JD Krebs, and Ellie Kodrin. Our editors are Jay Rothman and James Casada from Miratone Studios right here in the very heart of New York City. And the music that you hear at the top until the program is titled My Eden. It's by the very talented Rafi Malkiel from his album Water on the Tzadik label. IsraelCast is indeed powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. For more info about JNF USA, hope you got it by now. It's jnf.org. That's the website. And if you'd like to write to us with story ideas or just to say hello, I know Nisan and I would love to hear from you. So do email us at IsraelCast@jnf.org. Meantime, I'm Steven Shalowitz, thanking you for tuning in and looking forward to having you join us on future episodes of IsraelCast.